Hi, my name is Sean Mabry, I'm a writer, and today I wanted to talk about the difference between literary fiction and genre fiction. This is a contentious topic and a seemingly endless debate in the world of writing, and I wanted to clear it up with the simplest explanation I can offer. Literary fiction is essentially a con. And so is literary nonfiction for that matter, but that's a whole separate discussion. I'm going to just focus on fiction today. Because what we generally call genre fiction, which includes science fiction, fantasy, horror, thrillers, romance, all these, bookshelf genres, the things that are very clearly labeled at your local Barnes & Noble, that is literature. That is what literature was and has been and will be for basically the entire history of the written word. Those are the fundamental core stories we keep telling. And in fact, those are the same basic stories and characters and plot structures and, tonal elements that you find in literary fiction. But for some reason, literary fiction gets more respect, sometimes better pay, higher status, all these things. So why? Well, like I said, it's essentially a con. What we consider literary fiction is inevitably always tied up with the politics of our ruling class, be that the various aristocracies of Europe or the American aristocracy, which is essentially a continuation of that same aristocracy, just with a different pitch. So the reason why I bring this up is to shake you from the illusion that you are doing something inferior if you write genre fiction, or for that matter, that you're doing something superior if you write literary fiction. And I'm not necessarily saying you can't love or emulate literary authors. In fact, I love and emulate literary authors. Many people tell me that my style is very literary. But I don't believe for a second that I'm doing something superior to, say, what TV writers are doing for something like the Powerpuff Girls off the top of my head, or Supergirl. All these things that we would consider clear examples of genre fiction. Which, funny how that also ties into popular media, isn't it? It's the same game. We're all doing the same thing. We're all telling the same stories. It's minor, very incredibly minor differences in style. And beyond that, context, framing, positioning, who talks about the work, who says what about it, what their status is in the political hierarchy. That's really what determines what is, literary. It's very similar to the distinction between high class and low class. And if you want to see a fantastic demonstration of how silly that distinction is, look at fairy tales. Fairy tales are often considered literary fiction. They're up there with, Shakespeare and Beowulf and Chaucer, all the big guys. But fairy tales began, and in some ways actually those fellas began the same way. Fairy tales began as popular art. They began as these bawdy tales, that people would slur over pints of ale in the pub or in the tavern. They didn't begin as these high-minded, perfected pieces of craft, although they have always been very intricate and carefully constructed. So why are they now considered these sacred objects? Why are they now considered high class? Because that's convenient for the ruling class, because it feeds into narratives of nationalism, the superiority of a national culture, the proud tradition of English folklore, for example, or German folklore for that matter. And I know another good example is the Renaissance artist Caravaggio. You look at his work, you look at his lifestyle, he was a man of the streets. He was, he came from a rough background. He spent his time with you know, a lot of murderers and thieves and prostitutes, and loved them all, and used that kind of imagery to inform his work, which gave it this incredible vitality and, you know, brought this fresh perspective to his paintings. And now there are these high art objects that, you know, sell for millions of dollars and sit in these prestigious museums. But if Caravaggio were here today, he wouldn't be hanging out in those museums. He would be, like I said, out in the streets. So both this distinction between genre fiction and literary fiction, and between low culture and art and high culture and art, it's all completely arbitrary. And it's not worth worrying about if you're an artist. Do the work that you care about and share it with people who want to see it. It's that simple. Hope you enjoyed this video. Feel free to like, comment, share, subscribe, and I'll see you next week.